Hi.
Um, so there's three of us on the call right now. We've got Lindsay and Barb and then myself. We're all ACMs for the state level for fine arts this year. You guys want to say hi really quick?
Hello. Okay, this is Barb.
Barb's on there. I don't know where she's at though. All right, so how many people do we have on? Or can we just start off the bat or should we wait?
I would start, Marta.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
go ahead and
we're
start.
going to go through a few things. Let me get out of here. There we are. So first thing is, who are your challenge masters? I will post that into the documents in the Zoom in a few minutes. We have, how many regions? 9? I think 9 regions. But each region has a challenge master that you can contact if you have any questions. The other thing that we're going to talk about is, what does success mean in DI? And for us, it's really more about how the students and what the kids get out of it versus the competition and how they do in the competition. So we've got the regional and state competitions and then of course globals. We rather focus on their experience leading up to the competition rather than how they place in the competition. Obviously the competition itself is really important, but we want you guys to have a conversation with the kids about what does success mean to them in DI. Let's talk. Hey, Lindsay, you'll tell me if there's any questions popping up, right?
Yeah.
And then if anybody has questions, please post them and we'll go through them as we get them.
Post them in the Q&A session.
Yes, please. What are the DI Special Awards? We're going to talk about all three of them really quickly. The Renaissance Award, the Da Vinci Award, and the Spirit of DI Award. So Renaissance is the, how do I like to put it? It's the one that is the, when you see something, it's so perfectly done, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good, sorry. It's the perfectly done one, or it's the one that's executed so flawlessly that everybody is in awe of it. One of the things that as a team member I've realized, and then as a appraiser later in life, we as team members value these awards almost more than placing at any regional state competition or globals. These are those awards that leave everybody talking about it 4 or 5 years later. The Da Vinci Award is something that we've never seen before, and it's so extraordinary that you can't figure out how they created it. It's the, I don't know how else to explain. It's ideas that no one else has come up with, that everybody is just focused on so much that you can't think about anything else. And then the Spirit of DI Award is actually one of my favorites because it's one of those awards that anybody can get. A team manager can get, a parent can get, a kid can get, a team can get. It's what embodies destination imagination. It's the idea of camaraderie. It's the idea of good citizenship, for lack of a better term. These are these special awards that the kids should know about, sometimes even strive for, but it really makes DI special. Let's touch on interference really quickly. So, oh, hi, I can see those. Okay, so what types of activities are considered interference? If you guys haven't ever gone to team manager training, A, we highly suggest you go, but 2, they will give you guys different ideas of what team manager training interference is. So what I like to bring up during our trainings is what is that borderline? So let's say you have a team and they're talking about wanting to do a choreographed dance. So you introduce them to a ballerina so that they can learn ballet. That isn't technically interference because you're just giving them a resource to learn from. However,
It isn't, Marta, it isn't interference. There's no technically. Like, that makes it sound like you're breaking the rules.
no. There is no interference. Now, say the same team is talking about ninjas and they want to learn martial arts. And instead you say, you know what? I think a ballerina should teach you guys choreography. That is interference because you are shaping their ideas into what you think should be happening. So that is a distinction. The other thing that I always bring up and we bring up is, say you've got a team of first graders and they want to use a blowtorch for some reason. Now, a blowtorch might burn down your house, which is not a good thing. But you can stop them from using it because you don't want anybody hurt, but you can't build for them. So you need to help them come up with not a new solution, but help them understand that they can't destroy something, therefore they have to figure out a different way to do it. Hopefully that makes sense.
Marta, can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
So the best way, so the reason why we have a no interference policy is that one of the main tenets of our program is it's driven by the learners, it's driven by the students. And the best way to know is if the learning is being driven by the students is 7 words. If the kids get to do, create, and make, and you as the team manager get to guide, mentor, teach, and plan. So if you are guiding, teaching, mentoring, or planning, you're A-okay. The moment you start to do, create, or make, then you need to step back a little bit and let the students do it.
That's a really good way to put that.
All right, let's talk about the actual day of competition a little bit. If you've never been to a regional tournament, you and your team are going to get there and you will first meet your prep appraiser. Prep appraisers are the people who A, are checking for safety, and B, are hyping up your team, or vice versa, calming down your team, depending on the type of team members you have. These are the people that are going to go through your paperwork and make sure that you're not missing anything that you might be losing points on, or what we like to call double dipping. We'll get into double dipping a little bit later and go through that, but you want to not be scared of the prep appraiser. They're some of the nicest people and they're the most helpful. Those are the people that your team members can always ask questions of. For example, where's the plug, or where are the appraisers going to be sitting? These are the people that can help with that. Next, you go from the prep area into the launch area, and you're going to meet the team timekeeper announcer, and they're going to explain where they're going to be setting up, where the kids are going to be performing. And again, this is for the team. So the team managers, you're going to be put in your little spots, which your 2 chairs, and you sit on your hands and you're good to go. It's the end game for you guys. There's going to be anywhere from 3 to 7 appraisers. They're going to be moving around, so please don't worry if they sit in the front row and then all of a sudden in the middle of the performance they get up to move. They're doing that so they can hear the team better, see what the team is doing. It's normal for them to get up and move. Now, once the 8 minutes is up, kids are done performing, all the appraisers are going to get up and they're going to ask questions of the team. Please tell your parents not to come up until we let them come up, because we've got to clarify if we didn't see something. We want to make sure that the kids had fun. We want to make sure that they feel great about everything. We like to ask them what they're most proud of during this time frame. This is our opportunity to A, talk to the kids, B, clarify any answers that we need clarified on the paperwork, and 3, make sure that everybody is really excited about DI, especially the children, especially giving them a chance to tell us what they love about DI. But obviously, we have a challenge to solve, and Barb's going to talk about the challenge.
Okay, you ready? All right. The name of our challenge this year is Game On. It's probably going to be one of the most fun challenges for those of us who will be appraising, and hopefully it's also going to be a wonderfully fun process for the kids. I was one of the story developers, challenge developers on this challenge 2 summers ago. I think it takes about two years before a challenge comes and becomes published. There's 5 different parts to the game, to this challenge. The first one is called The Game. Then we have the story, the game gizmo, the container, and a technical element. In the game, every team is going to select a real life game. What makes a game a game? There are certain requirements. It has to be an organized activity. It has to have specific rules. It has an element of skill and chance. It has to be played by one or more players. It can be physical, electronic, or digital. And if any game fulfills all of those different parts, then it's considered a game. We want the kids to succeed at this. Most of the time, if you look at any kind of game, let's just say Monopoly, since that's the one that comes to most people's minds. Is it an organized activity? Yes. It's, you sit down, you've got the box, you've got the game board, you've got little things to move around a board. Are there specific rules? Yep, usually printed right there on the box, maybe in a little booklet. Is there skill and chance involved? Well, if it's your first time playing, you might get really lucky and do great because there is that element of chance. But there's also some skill in you learning which things make a successful player. Can it be played by one or more? Probably this would be a tough one to be played by one person, but as long as it can be played by one or more, it works. And physical, electronic, or digital, any of those formats are going to work. The team is also asked to research the rules, procedures, boundaries, sights and sounds about the game, and also because we are a family show, to please use judgment and choose a game that would be appropriate to have kindergartners viewing. It is open to, you know, anyone, and it can come in and watch the competition. So we would like it to be something that anyone could see. The second part, section B, is called the story. Your story, or the kid's story, needs to show research. The research has to deal with the actual game that they are going to use. The story also has to be told from 2 points of view. That does not have to be the whole time 2 points of view, although it can be, that's up to the team. As long as 2 points of view are shown during this, then you're fine. It can be set in any location and in any time period. So that's kind of a nice one right there, that it can be really, this is quite a wide open challenge. The third thing is called the game gizmo. The kids have to design and create, and they must integrate a game gizmo into the presentation. A game gizmo can be anything that would be a part of the game. It could be a set of dice. It could be a spinner. It's really up to the team as to how they want to portray this. Kate, are we doing the, I don't know if I need, no.
Lindsay's going to be checking questions.
I am, don't worry.
Okay, all right. The game gizmo has to cause an action or actions to happen. And this is a very important one. Team member must be a physical part of the game gizmo. We had a lot of questions when we did this presentation at the last team managers meeting. And a lot of people want to know, is it enough to have a team member physically spin a spinner? Would that be physical? or to roll the dice. Those were the two things that keep coming up, is something along that lines. And the answer to that, according to the International Challenge Masters, is no. It has to be more than that. It can't just be physically doing something with a spinner or rolling the dice. The kids have to physically be part of that gizmo. So that's a little something to think about. Anytime you have questions and you don't feel that it's immediately answered by just looking at the challenge, that's when you're going to ask for a clarification. You can, anytime you need questions answered, feel free to contact any of the three of us with a text, or phone calls are a little harder because 2 out of the 3 of us, lucky me, still work, and I'm a little more available during the day. So if you want, texting is probably the easiest, and that way you will get most of us during the day. The next part is called the container. You know that when you buy a game, it's often in a box or in some kind of a containment, and that's what we're asking the teams to do, is to construct a container that transforms during your presentation. A container is a 3D object that encloses all items used. There are a few exceptions to this. Team members may or may not be in the container. So that's up to the team. All costumes need to be in the container. If the team members are in the container, then they might have a little bit of leeway with that one if none of them is sticking out of the container. The container is also, it doesn't necessarily have to be 6-sided, but it does have sides. It may or may not have a top or a bottom, but nothing can extend. If it has no top, nothing can extend out of the top. Nothing can extend below the bottom of your enclosure or your container. The transformation, it has to change into something during your 8 minutes. The transformation, any visible change in appearance. We've seen and heard a lot of comments about, can you decorate the outside of your container? And the answer to that is yes, you can. But if something falls off, there will be no deduction for that. But if team members take something off of the outside of the container and use it in another way, or change the container in some way where you actually remove it, then that's not okay. If you affix things to the outside of the container, they must remain right where they started. That can't be the transformation without some technological methods happening there. You can't just take them off and use them somewhere else. Costumes must be inside except for hairdos, makeup, foot coverings, and those are all important things. So if the kids, that still means the kids still have to do their own hairdos, but they can do that ahead of time if they want to. Same with makeup. Makeup probably could take up your entire 8-minute skit, and so those can be done ahead of time. And foot coverings are just part of rules of the road. Anyone who's involved in a DI skit, during that 8-minute period, you will at prep time show that you all have your feet covered. And technically, if shoes come off, then we have to stop the presentation and until you put your shoes back on. And that's not really something that happens very frequently. And if you are, if it's part of your, if you have costumes that have to be put on, and you have to take off shoes in order to do that, the kids have got to find another way to make that happen without the shoes coming off. They need to keep them on. A team sign can be on the part of the container, or they can be in the container, or they can be, that's another exception. If they want to bring in the team sign separately, that does not have to be in the container. And the big important thing is that your container must fit through a standard doorway. And there will be standard doorways that the kids are going to have to come and go. So they do need to make sure that that happens. In addition to that, prep people, where you check in before you do your skit, are the ones that need to make sure that you have a team sign, that you have a gizmo, that what is your container, who are the people who are sharing the two different points of view. They're going to ask a lot of questions, and so they often like to just visually eyeball those things. So it doesn't mean if the kids have completely packed up everything, they don't need to completely unpack probably for prep. They probably just need to point them out. So that's one of the things they must do. Now, this year, this is a big switch for us. It took us a long time to get this approved, that we're going to let the teams choose whether they would like to have their technical element be the game gizmo or the container. So that's kind of a new thing for this year. We'll see how that is accepted. I think it would be a really fun thing to do. It's an additional, that means that either the game gizmo or that container is going to be worth quite a few points. There will still be 2 team choice elements. Team choice elements are things that the team chooses to have scored that is not being scored somewhere else. Check that there's a scoring page, and I'm sure you all have one of these. Yours may not be blue if you downloaded it on the internet, but there's a page that's called Scoring. Read this over carefully. I'm not going to read it to you today, but there's a graph down on the bottom that shows the percentage of like how much the story's worth, the game gizmo, the container, and the technical element. Make sure the kids take time and look at this and even give themselves a chance to score things along the way. And sometimes that points out to them, gosh, I think our container would probably be scored higher for technical elements. So there's no reason why they can't have the game gizmo and the container have a technical element and decide, you know, when they get to the end, which is technically more sophisticated or something that they'd like to use. That's up to the team. But as you read through all of these rules, I'd say read over the challenge as a team manager, maybe once a month, once you really feel you know it well, read it again and just see. If there's anything you need to know, be sure and ask for clarification. You can start with one of us and ask us whatever the team is interested in, and if we can answer it, we will, and if not, we will encourage you to get a clarification there. You do that online, and they really try and answer quickly so the team can continue to work on their solution. So basically that's
Hey, Bob. Someone had a question. Can you talk more about the 2 points of view?
Saying a point of view is how you feel or think about something. And usually those are opposing, but it doesn't say there that it must be an opposing point of view. It says different. So let me see if I can read that from the actual challenge. Present the story through 2 points of view. For this challenge, a point of view is the perspective from which the story is told and/or how the game is viewed by a person, place, or a thing. You can have more than 2 points of view, but the kids on your paperwork at the end of your challenge, you'll see the paperwork forms. It will kind of give you a better idea of what they're after here. You can have more than 2 points of view. If you have 5 kids on your team, theoretically, well, you could have any number of points of view, because it also doesn't say that every team member is only allowed 1 point of view. They will have you identify 2 people, and those 2 are the ones who are going to be scored.
2
So
points of view.
Mhm.
2 points of view, not necessarily 2 people.
Not necessarily 2 people. So that's really up to the team. If they can find an interesting way to present the points of view, then that would be great. So anything else question-wise?
It says, how long does the 2 points of view have to last? It doesn't have to be the whole presentation.
It does not have to be the whole presentation, as long as the appraisers are able to identify those 2 points of view. You will get a chance to, let me take a look at what it actually asks on here, on your paperwork. The appraisers actually look at this tournament data form. Looks like that. Don't know if my light's too good in here. Briefly describe your story. Be sure to include a description of the 2 points of view presented in your story. The point of view could last 10 seconds if you're quick and concise. It could last 8 minutes if that's really what you want to do. It's up to the team on that, but it doesn't have to last the whole time.
Okay, that's good. Anybody else?
We talked a little bit at our presentation about what makes a game. Like, could a Rubik's Cube be a game? And if you go through that little checklist that is on your, is also part of the challenge, you know, is it organized? Does it have a set of rules? Can it be played by 1 or more? You know, pretty soon you start to see, sure, that can be a game. It's pretty amazing. I don't know. I love that Lindsay, if you can see Lindsay's background, Lindsay has a lot of games up there. So, and these are all box games. I can share with you that when we wrote this challenge, that's what we were thinking about. And then we started thinking a little deeper and thought, well, wait a second. Soccer's a game, isn't it? Of course it's a game. Football's a game. And then it was like, well, what about electronic games? Are we going to allow that? Well, why would we not? So yeah, it's pretty amazing what could be a game. And the kids really get to create a game gizmo. Nothing in here says you have to do that you have to use the rules exactly as they are listed, because even like I see the Denver edition of
If your team member is a spinner, they don't have to be necessarily spinning the entire time.
right.
So this is an interesting question. Does the container have to be related to the game? And I don't think it does necessarily.
It's really up to the team again.
Exactly. You know, it could be for bananagrams, if that's your chosen game, it could be a large banana bag that carries you through the door. Otherwise, it could be just a simple box that rolls through the door on wheels. So it's up to your team that way, I think. We got that one. So I think Barb already answered this, but we'll just go over it again. A team manager asked, can the team have stuff coming out of the top of the container? And that was already said. Barb said no, right?
Correct. At that time, we said, we weren't sure. You really need to write for a clarification. Well, since then, I have had that clarified to me that, like, you can take the team members, if they're sticking out or anything else is sticking out of the container, then that is an illegal procedure. And so they can't do that. And we weren't sure about that on November 3rd. Now we're sure nothing can be sticking out. Like, the container can be any size. And if you choose to have all of the team members hold their scenery and you tie a rope, not you, but somebody ties a rope, somebody on the team, that's not going to work. That is not containing them. That's tying them together. But if we can see everything and it's not really enclosed at all, then that one's not going to work.
And then the second part of that question was, can the stuff be outside of the container coming into prep and then put it in as we show the appraisers to get it through the door onto the launch area?
And they really can do that. The problem is you get so much time for prep, and we've got to be careful about the time.
Yeah, we have to be cognizant of our
For
time.
everyone, because if we start getting behind, it's not fair to all the teams. We really need to be treat every team exactly in the same way. So know that there has to be a container. The container has to fit through the door, but as long as everything is in that container in the launch area, it will be okay. Now, there too, you can't be taking a long time, because once it's time for your presentation, they will start that presentation and they won't hold it for a team who's not yet ready to go. So
Right.
Taking a chance by not having it in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, especially since if it's a popular challenge, we could be in an 18-minute schedule and you don't want to risk your team not getting to perform. That's been answered. So does one of the team manager questions was, does a team member have to be part of the gizmo or do they have to be acting on the gizmo? Because it's a little bit vague in the challenge.
It is a bit vague in the challenge, and the correct answer there is they have to be a physical part of the game gizmo. It's not enough just to spin a spinner or roll dice. They have to physically figure out a way to become part of the game gizmo.
All right. This was an interesting one, I thought. It's the team managers asked, can the container be broken apart or destructured in some way to get to prep or to the stage? So does it have to stay in the original form that it started through a door? Like, can pieces be removed?
If it's part of their transformation, they have to wait until that 8 minutes has begun. And that's when they can start taking things out. There is no rule that says everything has to be in the box as you bring it through the door. But once you get it through and into launch, yeah, this is a from the International Challenge Masters. Once it's brought in, it has to go in that box, and none of it may be showing. So it's
So just to clarify, from prep to launch, they can have things out of the box to go through the door?
they can, as long as it all gets in. I mean, theoretically, if it all is going to get in there anyway, but it does not say in the challenge that the box must be completely filled before you go through the door. But it doesn't matter. It's everything that goes in that box that has to do with the challenge has to fit in the box. So I'm not really sure how that would, but you know, it depends on how each team designs their container. There might be instances, and I can't speak to particular teams' solutions, but if your team is thinking about not having everything in, and there's a reason for that, and they're not sure if they're going to get an illegal procedure, they should ask for clarification.
And the only thing I would worry and caution teams about is if we're on a tight schedule, the
Right.
movement from prep to launch might be seconds long.
Right.
And that run into problems. So just caution your teams about that.
We had an addition to that question. It says, can kids start the presentation using the outside of the container as a backdrop prior to opening the container, or does the presentation need to start only once the container is open?
Nope, they can open that container whenever they want after we say you may begin. So if they want to keep closed, use that as a backdrop, perfectly fine.
All right, let me just type that up. Can be used. And then we had another question. So if a team member is controlling a robot as the gizmo, does that count as being a part of the gizmo?
No. They need to be a physical part of it. Just controlling something and using a joystick that they didn't make or create, or you have to be a physical part of it. So physically making it work, and remember that this gizmo has to make some kind of action occur.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. And then one of these questions was, can we remove pieces or rules from a game even if we've done all the research and they are part of the game officially?
Yeah, they can. They can, as long as they are presenting, and they're going to have a chance on the tournament data form to give us a little synopsis of the research that they did, and integrating it in is part of where the score comes from. And if they want to then change it up, add some rules, as most of us do when we're playing games, adding rules is kind of part of the game. So yes, they are welcome to do that.
And then, so a lot of games have weapons as game pieces. Will that be allowed?
Probably not. Check with your tournament director and find out if there is a no tolerance order at that school. Then the other thing is, if teams are, if it's something that's integral to their game, they have a choice. Weaponry can be made out of cardboard, and if it's extremely easy to tell that it's not real, some tournaments will allow that. Or
yes, it has to be
pick
explicitly
another
fake.
game. Yeah.
So if your students are choosing games like Fortnite or Call of Duty, they're games and they count, but you just have to be wary about what they're doing with some of the pieces and plot lines and whatnot of those games, so that you can make sure that your presentation stays family friendly and school safe. Can the technical properties of the non-technical element item can those be scored as a team choice element?
Yes. Yeah. As long as it's not something that's being scored somewhere else.
Exactly. You can't double dip.
Yep.
But if your team is really technical and does a lot of technical things that are really cool, they can totally score those as a team choice element and score whatever their technical element is as that technical element.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is it interference to tell your team to bring games to practice?
Probably not. It would be absolutely fabulous if one of the kids were to say, let's all bring games and take a look at all the components. So theoretically, it would be wonderful if the kids came up with every single way to solve this challenge without the parents helping. But like we're showing behind Lindsay, or some games just to spur them into thinking about games.
And if the team manager is saying bring games to talk about this challenge, which talks about games, that's not interference. They are mentoring their children. They're showing them how to get to a solution, but not to what solution they need to get specifically. It's part of your job as a team manager.
However, that being said, if you only bring 2 games, that is a little bit on the interference side. So you must bring enough games that it's not causing them to create a solution that you are directing.
Well,
Even if you only brought 2, say, here's the 2, maybe I only have 2 games. Here's some games, but what are some of your favorite games? Can you tell me about games? What do they have in common? Look at all the components, take them apart. And I think that's something that team managers could do, is ask those important questions and let the kids come up with what they want to do.
exactly. It's brainstorming.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that if you have a wide variety of games, it might give your team an even more excellent chance of being super creative.
You could even ask the kids, well, where do you get games? And if they say, oh, we go to Target. Oh, maybe, do you think we should go to Target as a team? I mean, you could do that. We take kids to the hardware store and have them walk the aisles and look and see what's available. Going through the aisles at Target or Toys R Us, or just looking on Amazon, put in the word games. And I mean, you might get some inappropriate
safe
stuff
searches on.
on the internet. You have to be really careful. It's not something I'd send kids to do without some adult supervision there.
Let's see. Can team members be pieces of the game instead of playing the game as people? So like the Monopoly tokens, can they be the hat and the shoe rather than people playing Monopoly?
It does not say you can't, so go for it. Yep, they can.
Do we have to provide the rules of the game to the appraisers? You kind of mentioned this earlier, that you just have to show us that you did research, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to provide all 20 pages of the rules, right?
Right, and appraisers are not going to have time ahead to read all the rules of the game. Most of the time, we love to just take the kids' word for most everything. But if you have a picture of the game and just want to throw it in the container, and if an appraiser says, gosh, I've never heard of this game, show us the here's a photocopy of the box that we got this game from, or here's a picture of Uncle Harvey playing some strange game in Scotland. So all of that's fine.
And then does it have to be a piece that is included in the real game? Can they add their own piece to it?
They can.
Creativity is fun, everybody.
It is.
While we were talking, actually, something occurred to me, and I was going to ask you, Barb, do you think that what did I write down? Can it be a fictional game from a real piece of fiction? For example, like a holodeck on Star Trek is a game, and it's it's portrayed as real, does that count?
Same with Wizard's Chest.
Exactly.
Yeah, gee.
Because
I
people
know the rules are really specific about we want it to be a real game, but does that make it a real game? If
For
it's
example, like
part of
Quidditch.
fiction, Quidditch, you know, and
Like
Well,
people
except
play Quidditch.
I
yeah,
would
you
put a
can pretty much,
clarification in on that question. I wouldn't answer that. I'd do a clarification.
It was just something that popped into my brain. So
But you're right, Quidditch is now played on
on college
Yeah.
campuses.
I think there
But
is,
holodecks aren't.
yeah.
Well, some Trekkies are serious. That's all the questions I have from our list of questions. Does anybody else have a question that they want to get answered? Let's see. Do the kids need to be showing that they are playing the game?
They have to play the game a bit during that 8-minute presentation. It doesn't have to be the whole presentation, but I think I'm not sure that, looking at what we've done.
I think, Barb, because they have the option to be game pieces, they don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be playing the game.
I think they don't have to actually play it. I think they have to have some actions that are being brought about through using that game gizmo. But basically, yeah, I think it ends up being, yeah, I think they don't actually have to play the game. I think they can play the game if they choose to do so, but I don't think it's a scored element.
Does anybody else have any questions that we can answer for you? If you don't have them right now, we can always answer them through text or email. Work.
And if you found us here, you will probably have an easy time of finding our email. If you email us, we will give you our cell phones so that you can text.
I sent them
And-
to everybody. Don't
Oh, you already sent them.
worry.
Super. That's great too. Okay, so you've got them.
The only thing I want to bring up that we haven't brought up yet is paperwork. We talked a little bit about this. One of the most important things when it comes to getting teams points is paperwork. If there isn't a description on the paperwork of what a technical element is, we can't score it. So if you guys have the gizmo as the coolest technical element we have ever seen, but you guys put, for some reason, a different character doing as the gizmo, we can't pick and choose which one is the coolest. In other words, the paperwork is our Bible. We have to follow those specifications that the team give us. Our suggestion is that you fill out the paperwork 3 or 4 times to make sure that all the points are getting there and you're not double dipping. One of the worst things that can happen during prep is the prep person is going through the paperwork, they're looking through it, and they realize that something's getting scored twice, and then the team is put on a spot trying to figure out where they can get points for something that they now cannot get scored for. So paperwork is one of the key areas that every team should be focusing on.
And
So-
have your
and-
team go through the paperwork with you. They don't necessarily have to fill it out, especially if they're little. But make sure that they know what is being said on the paperwork so that when they're asked questions about it, it's not like, I don't know.
Yeah, really, all the paperwork, only elementary can have assistance in filling out the forms.
Yeah.
Middle school, high school, university level has to do this on their own, but everything that's on that form has to come out of a kid's mouth, and their brain has to think of, you can ask the questions that are on there. Also, make sure it's clear, make sure it's concise. Appraisers have maybe 3 or 4 minutes to read through what you have written. And it's just not long enough. I know I used to think, oh, we're being so clever. We're gonna type everything and use tiny, tiny, tiny print. Well, no, please don't do that. That you need to make it as concise as possible, with including all the important elements that you want the appraisers to make sure they get and don't miss. That's what it's for.
And, our job is to make sure that the kids get every point they possibly can. And we want to give them every point we possibly can. So if the paperwork doesn't show what they want us to see, then they might not get those points. And then everybody's going to go home feeling bad. And so we want to make sure that the paperwork is strong so that your kids get exactly the amount of greatness that they deserve, because they're great. And then I just had a question that says, does the paperwork need to be handwritten by children? It does not. It just needs to be, we'd prefer it to be from them. Like, you can tell it's spoken from a child's point of view, but it doesn't need to be handwritten. It doesn't need to be typed. You just fill it out so it's legible.
And there is a way to fill it out online. There is an interactive place where you can go and actually type on there if you want to do it that way.
It's on the resource site.
It's very handy.
And they can also fill out their expense report there, and they can also fill out their Declaration of Independence. So all of those are fillable PDFs on the resource site.
So I highly recommend that. Then you don't even have to worry about handwriting.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? We've got lots of great questions, and these questions will be typed up along with the questions you guys asked tonight, and we'll get Kate to mail them out. We can't figure out how to upload a document through Zoom, so we'll send out the stuff you guys need and asked tonight through Kate.
Have a great time with your groups. We can't wait to see what they're going to come up with.